A rich man kicked out a beggar, then found his photo in an old album. "Get away from my gate." The shout cut through the cool evening air like a slap. A man in a sleek gray suit stood at the top of his marble steps, his hand gripping a gold-handled door. His voice was sharp, cold, and loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Down below, a frail, dusty figure flinched. The beggar's clothes were torn, his hands trembling around a tin cup. He looked up slowly, eyes tired, voice soft. "Sir, I haven't eaten in 2 days. I only need a little food." The rich man, Mr. Donovan Pierce, a name that made people stand straighter when they heard it, scoffed. "You think I worked my whole life so strangers could beg at my door? Go find a shelter. You're ruining the view." He turned to walk back inside, but the beggar's weak voice stopped him. "Sir, you have everything. Why can't you spare something small?" Donovan spun around, his eyes blazing. "Because I earned everything I have. You think I got here by begging?" The man on the ground just nodded slowly. "Maybe not, but someone must have helped you once." For a second, Donovan froze. The words hit something, a memory he didn't want to touch. Then he shook his head sharply. "Leave. Now." He slammed the door so hard the echo lingered. Inside, the house gleamed with wealth. Marble floors, glass chandeliers, silver-framed photos on the wall. Donovan exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Another lazy fool," he muttered. "The world's full of them." But when he sat down at his dining table, the silence felt heavier than usual. His food looked perfect: roasted lamb, fresh salad, a bottle of red wine, yet his appetite was gone. He pushed the plate away and glanced toward the window. Outside, under the streetlight, the beggar was still sitting quietly, not moving, not cursing, just waiting, like a shadow that refused to disappear. Something inside Donovan's chest twisted. He turned away, whispering, "Don't look back, Donovan. Don't you dare." An hour later, the rain started to fall, light at first, then heavy. From his study window, Donovan could see the figure still huddled there, shivering under the downpour. He closed the blinds. He told himself he didn't care. He told himself the man would find shelter. He told himself he was doing the right thing. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered, "Why does he feel so familiar?" The thunder rolled through the night, shaking the glass windows of Donovan's mansion. He lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, but sleep wouldn't come. No matter how many times he closed his eyes, he kept seeing that face, wet from rain, sitting quietly on the sidewalk. He groaned, turning over. "Why am I even thinking about him?" But somewhere deep in his chest, something small and human whispered, "Because you've seen that face before." The next morning, Donovan walked into his office downtown, one of the tallest buildings in the city. The marble floors and mirrored walls reflected his success, but for once he didn't feel proud. His secretary, Helen, smiled politely. "Good morning, Mr. Pierce. You look tired." "Rough night," he muttered. "Coffee, black." While she left, Donovan sat at his desk, scrolling through contracts and reports. Numbers usually made him feel powerful. Today, they just looked empty. He leaned back, pinching the bridge of his nose. And that's when he saw it again. A faint image in his mind. A boy, in a dusty school uniform, sitting under a tree, sharing a sandwich with another boy who looked hungry. Donovan frowned, whispering, "That's impossible." He stood abruptly, pushing the memory away. But it clung to him, stubborn as guilt. That evening, on his way home, the rain returned. As his driver slowed near the mansion, Donovan looked out the window. The spot where the beggar had sat last night was empty. Only a wet piece of cardboard remained. A strange pang hit his chest. He got out, walked closer, and saw something lying by the wall. An old cloth bag, torn at the edges. Inside were a few coins, a broken wristwatch, and a small faded photograph. He pulled it out carefully. His breath caught. It was a picture of two boys. One grinning widely, the other holding a small loaf of bread between them, and the one smiling was him. Donovan's throat tightened. No, this can't be. He looked closer. The second boy, thinner, darker-skinned, barefoot, had the same tired eyes as the man he'd just thrown out. His knees felt weak. The world blurred. He sank to the ground in the rain, clutching the photo like it was proof of something terrible he'd forgotten. The beggar wasn't a stranger. He was Samuel, the boy who once shared his food when Donovan had none. The rain poured harder, washing the dirt from the picture, and with it, washing away every lie Donovan had told himself, he whispered, voice shaking, "Dear God, what have I done?" The next morning, Donovan didn't touch his breakfast. The plate sat untouched on the dining table as he stared at that old, faded photograph. Two boys under a mango tree, one with shoes too big for his feet. Him, the other barefoot, smiling, Samuel. Donovan whispered, "How could I forget you?" He remembered that dusty little village outside Greenhill, where he'd grown up poor before everything changed. His father had left. His mother worked 2 jobs just to feed him. And when there was nothing left to eat, Samuel had shared his food every day, even when he barely had any himself. "You can have half," Samuel used to say, grinning. "I'm not that hungry anyway." But Donovan had always known. Samuel was hungry. The memory burned. Now, the same boy who once fed him had stood starving at his gate, and he'd turned him away like trash. He grabbed his coat and rushed out the door. "Where to, sir?" his driver asked. "Downtown. The homeless shelters. All of them." The driver blinked. "All of them, sir?" "Yes, all of them. They started with the first shelter." "No, Samuel, then the second. Then the third." Hours passed. The rain had stopped, but Donovan's guilt only grew heavier. At the 4th shelter, a tired-looking woman at the desk looked up when he showed her the photograph. "Have you seen this man?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. She studied it for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, he came by yesterday. We tried to give him food, but he said he wanted to go somewhere else. Something about finding someone." Donovan's heart raced. "Where did he go?" The woman frowned, thinking. "I think he mentioned an old train station near the west side. He said he used to meet a boy there." Donovan's throat tightened. "A boy?" She nodded. "He said the boy was like a brother." By evening, Donovan was standing at that train station. Old, rusted, forgotten. Wind howled through the broken windows. He looked around desperately. "Samuel!" he called out. His voice echoed back at him. "Samuel, it's me, Donovan." No answer. Only the soft flapping of a loose metal sheet. Then, from behind an old bench, came a faint cough. Donovan rushed over. There he was, Samuel, thinner than before, his skin pale, his hands shaking. "Samuel." Donovan fell to his knees beside him. "Oh my God, it is you." Samuel opened his eyes weakly. "Donovan?" Donovan nodded quickly, tears welling up. "Yes, it's me. You came to my house. I didn't recognize you." Samuel smiled faintly. "It's all right, Donnie. You were always the dreamer. I didn't expect you to remember a beggar." Donovan's voice cracked. "You were never a beggar. You were my friend." Samuel coughed again, weaker this time. "I told you. One day, you'd have everything." "Guess I was right." Donovan's tears fell freely now. "No, Sam, not everything. Not if I lost you." He took off his coat and wrapped it around Samuel. "I'm taking you home." "My home." Samuel tried to speak, but his voice was barely a whisper. "Home? You mean that big house? You think I'd fit there?" Donovan held him close. "If I could fit in your heart when I was starving, you can fit in my house now." Samuel smiled weakly. "Still good with words, huh?" Donovan managed a trembling laugh. "No, just finally saying the right ones." He helped Samuel up, holding him tightly, the same way Samuel had once held him when they were boys. And as they walked out of that broken train station, the sky began to clear. The black car rolled up the driveway of Donovan Pierce's mansion, the same one where Samuel had been thrown out just 2 nights before. But this time, Donovan wasn't behind the gate shouting. He was the one helping a frail man up the steps. "Easy, Sam. Take it slow," he whispered, holding Samuel by the shoulders. Samuel smiled faintly. You sure this is your place? Looks too clean for a guy who used to fall asleep on hay. Donovan chuckled through the ache in his chest. Yeah, well, things change, Samuel coughed lightly. Not everything does, Donnie. Some things just hide until you remember them. When they stepped inside, the house staff froze. Helen, the housekeeper, gasped softly. Sir, who is this man? Donovan looked at her firmly. This man is my guest. Prepare the guest room. The one with the balcony. Helen hesitated, her eyes flicking to Samuel's torn clothes. Sir, that's your father's old suite, I said. Donovan's voice trembled but stayed strong. Prepare it. She nodded quickly and left. The other servants stared, uncertain, whispering among themselves. As they walked through the grand hall, Samuel stopped and looked around. You really built all this? Donovan nodded. Years of work, Samuel smiled softly. And yet, you still look hungry, Donovan blinked. Hungry? Not for food, Donnie, Samuel said gently. For peace. Those words hit Donovan harder than any insult could. Later that night, Donovan sat by Samuel's bedside. A doctor had come, given him medicine, and left instructions. Samuel was weak but stable. Donovan watched him sleep, the rhythmic sound of the oxygen machine filling the room. He whispered to himself, You saved me once, Sam. You shared what little you had. And I became the kind of man who forgot what kindness even feels like. He wiped his eyes quickly, ashamed. But not anymore. The next morning, Helen brought breakfast. She placed the tray down, glancing nervously at the guest. Donovan caught her hesitation. Helen, do you know what kindness looks like? She blinked. Sir. He gestured toward Samuel. It looks like him. Years ago, when I had nothing, he fed me. And when he had nothing, I turned him away. So if you ever see another soul at that gate, feed them first. Ask later. Her eyes softened. Yes, sir. Samuel stirred awake, smiling weakly. Still giving orders, huh? Donovan smiled. Only the good kind now. Outside, the morning sun touched the glass walls of the mansion, making them shimmer like something new, something purer. And for the first time in years, Donovan didn't feel trapped inside his wealth. He felt human again. He turned to Samuel and said softly, You once gave me bread. Sam, let me give you back your dignity. Samuel nodded slowly, tears forming in his tired eyes. You already did, Donnie. The day you opened your door. By the end of the week, every whisper in the neighborhood carried the same shocking line. Did you hear? Donovan Pierce brought a beggar into his mansion. It started with the gardener, then the driver, then the woman who cleaned the windows. Within days, it reached every coffee shop, every dinner table, every gossip circle in town. How could a man of his status let someone like that stay with him? One woman muttered at the cafe. Another scoffed. Maybe he's lost his mind. But inside that mansion, Donovan didn't care what anyone thought. For the first time in years, he was doing something that actually mattered. Samuel was recovering slowly. The color had begun to return to his face, and sometimes Donovan even caught him smiling again. One morning, Samuel looked out at the garden from his bed. You've got too many flowers, Donnie, Donovan laughed. Too many? Yeah, Samuel said, smiling faintly. When people have too many flowers, it means they're trying to hide something that doesn't bloom inside. The words hit Donovan straight in the heart. He sat beside the bed quietly. You think that's me? Samuel chuckled. I think you're trying to fix it. That's enough. Later that afternoon, Helen entered nervously. Sir, she said softly, the mayor's assistant is outside. He's asking if the rumors are true. Donovan set his pen down. Tell him to come in. Moments later, a well-dressed man stepped into the study. Mr. Pierce, I'll be blunt. The town's talking. You're housing a beggar. Some people say it's not a good look for a man of your influence. Donovan stood, voice calm but strong. Tell them it's not a look, it's a lesson. The man blinked. A lesson? Yes, Donovan said. Because once I was the one who had nothing. And if the town can't handle kindness, maybe the problem isn't the beggar at my door. Maybe it's the coldness behind theirs. The assistant stared at him, speechless. Then Donovan smiled faintly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got someone to take care of." That night, as the lights glowed across the mansion, a small group of neighbors gathered outside the gate. Some out of curiosity, others out of disbelief. Through the window, they saw Donovan sitting beside Samuel, sharing dinner and laughter. Two men from different worlds, connected by one memory and one act of mercy. A child in the crowd tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mama, why's the rich man eating with the poor man?" The woman hesitated. Then she whispered, "Because maybe the poor man's the one who taught him how." Inside, Samuel leaned back in his chair. "They're staring, Donnie." "I know," Donovan said with a grin. "Let them. Maybe they'll learn something tonight." Samuel laughed softly. "You sure you're the same kid who used to run from the rain?" Donovan smiled, eyes glistening. "No, I'm the man who finally learned what it's for." They clinked their glasses of water together, both smiling, not rich, not poor, just two souls who had found each other again. It was a quiet Sunday morning. Sunlight spilled softly across the living room floor, and the sound of distant church bells floated through the air. Donovan sat beside Samuel's bed, reading the newspaper, when he noticed something unusual. The maid had left an old, dusty box near the bookshelf. "What's that?" Samuel asked weakly, tilting his head. Donovan picked it up, brushing away the layer of dust. "Looks like something from my mother's attic. I told Helen to bring down the old boxes last week. Must have forgotten this one." Samuel smiled faintly. "Your mother was kind, wasn't she?" Donovan paused. "Yeah, she was the reason I ever believed kindness mattered." He opened the box. Inside were old letters, yellowed papers, and a faded photo album wrapped in a lace cloth. The edges were torn, but the photos inside were clear, moments frozen in time. He flipped through them slowly. Birthdays, school uniforms, a wooden house, and then he stopped. It was them. Two boys again, sitting under the mango tree, their arms around each other. But this photo was different. On the back, in his mother's neat handwriting, it said, "Donnie and Sam, brothers where it matters most." Donovan's breath caught. She remembered him. Samuel blinked in surprise. "She wrote that?" Donovan nodded slowly. "She always told me, kindness is family without blood." I never understood what she meant until now. Samuel smiled faintly. "Your mama used to give me bread too, remember? She said, 'If my son eats, you eat.'" Donovan laughed quietly, eyes misting. "She never told me that." "She didn't want you to know," Samuel said softly. "Didn't want you to feel guilty when things got better for you." Donovan looked down at the album again, his voice breaking. "I thought I lost everyone who cared about me, Sam, but you were right there, and I was too blind to see." Later that evening, Donovan placed the album on his desk and stared at it for a long time. For the first time, the mansion didn't feel empty. It felt like home, real, messy, and human. Samuel's voice came from the doorway. "You know what's funny? You used to dream about building a big house like this when we were kids." Donovan smiled softly. "Yeah, but I never realized it would feel so small until you walked in." Samuel chuckled weakly. "Then let's make it big again. Fill it with something money can't buy." Donovan nodded, eyes shimmering. "Love?" Samuel smiled. "No, Donnie. People." That night, as the lights dimmed, Donovan carefully placed the photo album beside Samuel's bed. And for the first time in decades, both men slept peacefully, not haunted by the past, but comforted by it. 2 weeks later, the mansion buzzed with noise, journalists outside, curious neighbors whispering by the gate. Donovan Pierce, the man once known for his fortune and pride, had announced a press conference. No one knew why. Inside, Samuel sat in his wheelchair by the window watching the commotion. "You sure you want to do this, Donnie?" Donovan adjusted his tie, calm but determined. "I've spent half my life collecting things that never fed my soul. It's time to give them back." Samuel smiled weakly. "You're crazy," Donovan chuckled. "Maybe. But maybe that's what this town needs. A little madness with a heart." When he stepped out onto the marble porch, cameras flashed like lightning. A sea of microphones waited. Reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Pierce, is it true you're selling your company? Why bring a homeless man into your home?" Has the great Donovan Pierce lost his mind? He raised his hand gently, silencing them. "No," he said calmly. "I haven't lost my mind. I've found my heart." The crowd went quiet. He continued, voice steady but full of emotion. "Years ago, when I was a starving boy, a friend named Samuel fed me with the little he had. I promised myself I'd repay him someday, but instead I forgot him, and I forgot what kindness meant." He looked out across the cameras, his voice breaking slightly. 2 weeks ago, that same friend knocked on my door. Hungry, weak, and forgotten. I didn't recognize him. I threw him out. That's who I became, a man too rich to remember mercy. A hush fell over the crowd. Even the reporters lowered their cameras slightly. "But that ends today," Donovan said. "I've decided to give half of everything I own, my company shares, my savings, my land, to build shelters, schools, and medical homes for people like Samuel. Because no one should ever be turned away from a door the way I turned him away." The crowd gasped. Someone shouted, "Half your fortune? Are you serious?" Donovan smiled. "Money built my walls. Now it'll break them down." From the balcony, Samuel watched with tears in his eyes. He whispered softly, "That's my boy." As Donovan finished speaking, a reporter asked, "Mr. Pierce, what changed your heart?" Donovan looked up toward the window where Samuel sat and said, "A beggar reminded me that kindness isn't charity. It's remembering who you were before the world made you forget." That night, the news spread across the city. Some called him foolish. Others called him a saint. But Donovan didn't care about names anymore. He returned to Samuel's side, smiling. Samuel reached for his hand. "You didn't owe me anything, Donnie." Donovan's eyes glistened. "I owed the world a better version of myself." Samuel nodded slowly. "Then I guess debt's paid." They both laughed softly. Outside, the mansion lights glowed not with wealth, but with warmth. The morning came soft and golden, the kind of morning that felt like mercy. The mansion was quiet, too quiet. Donovan walked down the hall with 2 cups of coffee, humming a tune his mother used to sing. When he entered Samuel's room, he paused. Samuel was sitting up in bed, looking out the window. The sunlight fell across his face like a blessing. "Morning, old friend," Donovan said with a smile. "You slept well?" Samuel turned his head slowly, his smile faint but peaceful. "I dreamed I was back under the mango tree." Donovan laughed softly. "You always did love that tree." "Yeah," Samuel said, eyes still on the sunlight. "In my dream, we were both there again. You were chasing the wind. I was just watching you run." Donovan chuckled. "That sounds about right." Samuel looked at him quietly for a moment. "Donnie, you kept your promise." Donovan frowned slightly. "Promise? You said you'd make something big one day." "You did. But more than that, you made something good." Donovan's throat tightened. "Sam, don't talk like that. We're just getting started. The shelters, the schools. I still need you here to help me cut the ribbons." Samuel smiled softly. "I already cut mine, Donnie, long time ago." The air went still. Donovan felt something shift in his chest, that quiet, terrible sense that goodbye was near. He pulled a chair closer, his voice trembling. "Don't you dare leave me again." Samuel looked at him, eyes gentle. "I'm not leaving you. I'm just going ahead. You'll catch up. You always do." Donovan's tears finally broke free. He grabbed Samuel's hand, holding it tightly. "You gave me everything, Sam, even when I didn't deserve it." Samuel smiled faintly. "Then do one more thing for me." "Anything," Donovan whispered. Samuel's voice came soft like a prayer. "Never shut your door again." "Not for anyone." Donovan nodded, tears falling freely now. "I swear it." Samuel's grip loosened. His eyes drifted toward the sunlight. "Good. Then I can rest easy." And just like that, the man who once shared his last piece of bread took his last breath smiling. That evening, Donovan buried Samuel under the mango tree behind his estate, a tree he'd planted years ago without even realizing why. He stood there for a long time, hand on the wooden cross, whispering, "You gave me life twice, Sam, once when I was starving, and once when I was lost." The wind rustled through the leaves above him, and he smiled through his tears. He knew, in some way, Samuel was still there, watching, like always. Months later, Donovan's mansion became something new. The Samuel Pierce Foundation. A home for the forgotten, a shelter for the broken, a school for those who never got a chance. Every door stayed open, always, and on the wall in the main hall hung a framed photo. Two boys under a mango tree laughing, their arms around each other. Below it, a brass plaque read, "True wealth isn't what you build. It's who you lift." The end. Moral. You never truly lose the people who teach you love. Their kindness lives on in every door you open, every hand you hold, and every act of mercy you choose to give.